Should we as diabetics snack? How does snacking affect insulin levels, thus your overall health? If one is a pre-diabetic, a type 2 diabetic with insulin resistance, then there will be definite consequences and repercussions to snacking. Today, I will expose some scathing realities for you. Who are the mysterious proponents pushing the established nutritional agendas, and why? How do these corrupt, manipulated agendas like snacking influence your treatment and your long-term life expectancy? But before we begin, let me welcome all of you resilient diabetics out there. This is the channel we turn ordinary, struggling diabetics into extraordinary, well-controlled diabetics. If you don't know who I am and you are brand new to this channel, I welcome you. My name is Sampat, and I became an insulin-dependent diabetic a little over 6 years ago due to an autoimmune attack which caused the destruction of my pancreas as a result of a severe gluten allergy attack. So basically, I am the proud owner of a pancreas that's gone on a permanent and lifelong vacation. So not only am I diabetic just like you, where we will be walking that walk together and talking that talk, but I do also have a University of Bachelor of Science degree in nutrition dietetics, and that does come in very handy when it comes to discussing all the intricacies of being a diabetic. The unique information presented today will only be found here on the Resilient Diabetic. New, life-changing episodes are released weekly. So if you want to learn more and you want to be notified that a new video has been published, then the only way to do that is to hit that subscribe button followed by the gray notification bell. Then choose turn on all notifications. And of course, if you liked what you've learned today, please hit that like button for me. As with all my videos, this should not be considered personal medical advice. This is my interpretation of the latest research. If you want medical advice, please always consult your physician. There are sites out there proclaiming they know the best snack for diabetics. But I'm here to tell you, snacking is the other major cause for diabetes and the other common diseases also known as metabolic syndrome. To really understand this health paradox, we have to rewind a bit and discuss some of the physiological knowns. The human body contains approximately 5 liters of blood, and circulating throughout that 5 liters of blood, there are approximately 4 grams of sugar. A healthy body only requires, and most importantly wants, less than a teaspoon of sugar at any given time floating around in that 5 liters of blood. 1 teaspoon equates to approximately 100 milligrams a deciliter on your glucose meter. Anything above 1 teaspoon in the presence of insulin goes towards fat storage. That is, if it's not being used immediately for direct energy. 1 serving of rice, around 150 grams, is equivalent to 10 teaspoons of sugar. 1 potato contains 8 to 9 teaspoons of sugar. That healthy quote-unquote slice of whole grain barley bread, 5 to 6 teaspoons of sugar. Even that healthy banana, once broken down and absorbed, will equate to 5 to 7 teaspoons of sugar. What does the body require? 1 teaspoon of sugar. Remember, insulin has to be produced by the pancreas, or in my case, has to be taken by injection to lower sugars back down after each one of those servings. We haven't even talked about those snacks in between meals. So every time you snack, you then raise insulin levels even further. Yes, even those 100-calorie snack packs will raise insulin, more so than, say, a handful of almonds or cheese, but snacking raises insulin, period. In other words, snacking keeps insulin levels elevated, which means the window for any one of the metabolic syndrome diseases has just been opened. What is metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome is a group of 5 risk factors that increase the likelihood of early death. And the 5 risk factors are increased blood pressure, high blood sugar levels and insulin resistance, excessive fat buildup inside the liver, deep within the muscle tissues and buried up and around the internal organs. It is the body fat you cannot see that creates this death spiral. You also have high circulating triglyceride levels and low levels of HDL, which is the good cholesterol carrier. What are the complications of metabolic syndrome? Hardening of the arteries, diabetes, heart attack, kidney disease, kidney failure, stroke, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, peripheral artery disease, and cardiovascular disease. And once diabetes sets in, there may be additional health complications, including eye damage, nerve damage, kidney damage, amputation of the limbs. And now we conclusively know, thanks to research done in the last few years, damage to our brains. And this is far bigger than anyone could have imagined. Once prediabetes and diabetes starts to occur, the excessive sugar starts to eat or corrode what's known as the blood-brain barrier. This barrier is what protects the brain from all the toxic substances in the blood. So in other words, this barrier becomes leaky and weak, thus the delicate brain then becomes compromised and impaired. In my last video on diabetes and blood pressure, which I will create a link for you in the description box below, I mentioned that about 75 million American adults have high blood pressure. So that's roughly 1 in every 3 adults. But what is even more interesting is that approximately 84 million American adults, more than 1 in 3, have prediabetes. And 90% of the people with prediabetes don't even know they have it. We have discussed the common connection between both. That was high circulating sugars, thus insulin levels in the body. The term hyperinsulinemia was linked to everything. Our bodies are just not designed to have high circulating insulin levels throughout the day and the night. But we've been told carbohydrates, especially the whole grains, the oats, the cereals, the breads, and even the fruits are good for us. So have we all been led astray? By whom and for what purpose? We can clearly see this high carbohydrate food experiment we've been running for decades is killing us. A few years ago, the JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, did a complete and scathing exposure of our esteemed nutritional experts and thus our guidelines. The Journal of the American Medical Association, in case you were not aware, is a peer-reviewed medical journal. It is ranked 3rd out of 160 journals in the category of medicine. And I'll put a link to the New York Times exposure in the description box below too. They provided hard evidence of bribery that's been going on since the 1960s to blame dietary fats, i.e. saturated fats, instead of carbohydrates for heart disease, for obesity, and diabetes, if you can believe that. Food manufacturers, which the article directly mentioned, like Nestle, General Mills, as bribing researchers and all of the institutions and organizations to continually blame saturated fats as the culprit. And if you think this is no longer going on, you are highly mistaken. All of the studies on fat intake were manipulated and contrived in their favor, all done and paid for by the sugar, the snack, and the food manufacturers. And more importantly, all the studies that clearly prove carbohydrates, not fats, were the cause of the major health issues were then either destroyed or ignored because it did not fit their narrative. It's been pounded into our heads. Saturated fats and cholesterol were the cause for this worldwide epidemic. What's even more clearly devious, they knew the research was showing carbs were to blame. So in order to take the onus off themselves, they then took a hard stance against what? Junk food and sodas and refined carbohydrates, which I also do agree are to blame too. How deep did this go? all the way to the heads of the top health organizations like the United States Department of Agriculture. Remember, they developed the food pyramid or the diet pyramid, which represents the optimal number of servings to be eaten each day from each of the basic food groups. And as you can see, what has been recommended: breads, oatmeal, cereals, starches, snacks, carbohydrates, and more carbohydrates. And it just so happened when fats were demonized in the 1960s was when the explosion of metabolic syndrome started. When our food manufacturers, along with our esteemed institutional experts, in lockstep, I may add, took this a step further and started the low-fat, fat-free craze, this is when our health issues went exponentially worse. This is where snacking was really pushed as they replaced fats in the foods with more sugars. Today, saturated fat and cholesterol warnings still remain the cornerstone of our government's false and manipulated dietary guidelines, which then establishes rules and procedures for our doctors and nutritionists, which they have to follow for fear of repercussions. And how is this tied to you? I'll give you an example. Most of our doctors still use the total cholesterol model as their marker for health. The higher the cholesterol, the higher they say your risk of disease and death. The question is, how outdated is this model, knowing now that all of our institutions have been compromised, including the American Heart Association? Have you ever wondered why your favorite box of cereal, which happens to be all sugar, promotes the low cholesterol model along with the American Heart Association's branded heart label? Now you know why. Using the cholesterol model, to me, is like arguing the earth is flat. Let's use this really crude analogy. Say every time you see a large fire, you also then happen to see the fire department. Are we to assume the fire department caused the fire? Well, they're always at the scene of the crime, so they must be responsible for setting the fire. Just like the fire department, cholesterol is always at the scene of the crime and is blamed as the cause for heart disease. But is it really the cause, or is it trying to heal the body or put out the fire? Remember, cholesterol is essential for making cell membranes or cell structures and is vital for the synthesis of hormones. It is essentially involved in the health and repair of the billions of cells that we have in the body. Without it, we would literally die. Again, all the research was already showing sugars and high circulating insulin levels was the direct cause of heart disease. But that was cleverly ignored and quietened. They already knew the excessive insulin from the high carbohydrate diets and the excessive snacking was causing inflammation. Thus, the need for cholesterol to come and help heal the damage. But they've known this the whole time. How insidious has this become? The high carbohydrate science experiment, or scam as some have put it, we have been running for half a century, is now coming to fruition. We've gone from eating once or twice a day, where the body would get breaks from insulin, to now eating 5 to 8 times a day. We now have a breakfast, and then snacks, and then lunch, and then snacks, to dinner, and then more snacks. And each one of those meals followed by the adjacent snack, which also has high amounts of carbohydrates, then keeps insulin chronically elevated throughout the day. And most importantly, as I've been explaining in previous episodes, even the healthy carbohydrates our esteemed experts keep suggesting are also the culprits too. They want to continually blame junk food. Okay, say you have that one large apple for that in-between snack. Once digested and absorbed into the bloodstream, that apple will have the same amounts of sugar as a can of soda. But what's worse, it will also require the same amounts of insulin to bring down those blood sugars. What does that lead to over time? Yes, all the metabolic disorders like heart disease, diabetes, and chronically high blood pressure. Now, this is very, very important. Do I have an anti-carbohydrate stance? No, I do not. Let me state this loud and clear. I do not believe in the extreme diets as being optimal either, especially the ones that remove a major macronutrient from the diet. On the other side, I also thoroughly disagree with the notion for the continual consumption of the highly dense carbohydrates our esteems still deem as healthy. As I've said before, insulin can be either inflammatory or anti-inflammatory at the same time depending on the amounts. In the right amounts, it can exert a vasorelaxation or the relaxation of blood vessels and an anti-inflammatory effect on the entire body. Insulin is the most powerful anabolic hormone we have in the body, which means it is critical for repair, for recovery, and the replenishment of all of our body cells. But when too much carbohydrates are continually eaten, insulin will work violently against us. Insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia, or high circulating insulin levels, will occur. This then results in insulin destroying the body by becoming highly inflammatory. There is a balance of how much insulin is needed by the body. Once one has made the big step in lowering excessive circulating insulin levels, will the body start the process of healing itself from all the excessive sugars. The beautiful and simplistic part of this whole equation, all of the metabolic syndrome complications will start to dissipate all at the same time. To end some of the added confusion for you, I will set up a playlist with a multitude of videos that will cover the foods and the carbs I do recommend and why. The carbs that not only have my A1C test in the low fives, but just as importantly, have me using the least amounts of insulin so my blood sugars remain flatlined and well controlled all day long. That then keeps this old insulin-dependent diabetic feeling energetic, strong, and vibrant all day long. If you're on a desktop or laptop, use that mouse to click that upcoming box. If you're on your mobile device, tap that with your fingers. The first is the link to subscribe to this all-important life-changing channel. The second is the link to the playlist I will create for you on the videos mentioned on foods. So, have a great and productive day, and we will see you soon with another new episode, which I said are always released weekly. Bye for now.